Hi everyone, Cherie here from Ashima Living. I'm a naturopath, yoga and mindfulness instructor specializing in helping burnt out busy women overcome anxiety and low mood naturally and without nasty side effects. And today I wanted to do something a little bit different in my live and actually share a case study with permission from one of my recent clients because it's a really interesting case study. And I thought it would maybe inspire you with what's possible or help you understand how naturopathic medicine can actually help with mental health, because it's not always the first thing people think of when they think of getting help for mental health problems. So this was a woman in her 30s. She had 3 kids, one of which was a baby, so under a bit of stress. And she was presenting with depression, social anxiety, pain in her fingers, quite significant pain in her fingers, and also pain in her hips, back, and neck. So she had actually already been to see a naturopath and was already taking St. John's wort, zinc, turmeric, magnesium, calcium, so all really good remedies. And she had tried SSRIs from the doctor, so antidepressants from the doctor. But none of these had really made much of an impact. In terms of her history, she had had a history of social anxiety as a child, and there was a family history of anxiety and depression on both the mother and the father's side. So when I hear family history plus social anxiety as a child, I have a bit of an alarm bell go off in my head for something called pyrrole disorder. So pyrrole disorder, it's not that well known and it's still being researched, but it's debatable whether it's a genetic condition or not. It does seem to run in families and it is there from childhood often. And people with different mental health conditions, particularly social anxiety, tend to test positive for pyrrole disorder. So what it is a metabolic condition where you excrete excess amounts of certain nutrients, which means your body's not utilizing them. So particularly zinc, B6, certain fatty acids, and a couple of others. And this can have a significant impact on your mood because you actually need those nutrients to create neurotransmitters. So I had it in the back of my head to potentially get her tested for pyrrole disorder. When we dug a bit deeper into her depression, it turned out she'd had that since she was a teenager. And I really had to kind of draw it out of her as to what was going on, what kind of precipitated it. And I think this is actually one of the advantages of naturopathic consultations, simply the case-taking aspect of it, because we do a really long initial consult, 60 to 90 minutes, where we take a thorough case history and we look at all the systems of the body together as a whole. We can start to really tease out the story, which if you're in a 5 to 10 minute GP consultation, unfortunately, they just don't have the time to go that deep a lot of the time. So as I was questioning her about how it started, I was thinking hormones or maybe trauma or something like that. But the truth is, it wasn't any of that. At first she said she was kind of hanging out with the wrong people, and then when I dug a bit deeper, it turned out like a lot of young people, she was using recreational drugs, particularly ecstasy and MDMA. And when I questioned her on the frequency of this, it was quite a significant amount every weekend for several years. And so then I started thinking, okay, this could be a biochemical issue. So depression is definitely not always a biochemical issue. The whole serotonin theory has been debunked several times over, despite people still thinking that's what the issue is. But in this case, I was thinking, okay, this could be an issue with biochemistry. We did a neurotransmitter mood questionnaire. So this is not a scientific test, but it does kind of evaluate all of your symptoms and suggest which neurotransmitters could be potentially needing support nutritionally. And the ones that came up for her were serotonin, norepinephrine, and melatonin. And interestingly, long-term ecstasy use does affect serotonin and norepinephrine. So that was another kind of, I guess, extra piece of evidence that made me think, okay, we've got something going on here. So for that first treatment, or let me just explain a little bit about serotonin and ecstasy. So first of all, to actually create serotonin in the brain, there's a number of biochemical steps that have to happen. So just let me geek out for a second. So first of all, you need to have tryptophan, which is an amino acid that you get from your diet. And then an enzyme will convert that into something called 5-hydroxytryptophan, or 5-HTP. And then from that, another enzyme will convert the 5-HTP into serotonin. And then some of that can be converted via another enzyme into melatonin, which is what helps with sleep. So when you've done a lot of ecstasy, what can happen, especially when you're young and your brain is still developing, is that enzyme in that first step from tryptophan to 5-HTP gets damaged, or you don't produce it as well as normal. So if that step's not working, then those flow-on effects to serotonin and melatonin are potentially not going to work as well, which would explain why things like the St. John's wort and the SSRI medication weren't really doing anything, because they only recycle the serotonin that you've already got, but she wasn't producing that much in the first place. So I really thought I wanted to try something called 5-HTP. So that next step, the 5-hydroxytryptophan, we can actually give that as a supplement. So it's already converted into that next step. And then it's easier for the body to just convert it into serotonin or melatonin. So the first consult, I just did the 5-HTP plus this particularly strong new type of fish oil that is higher in anti-inflammatory mediators for her pain. And I also referred her for some blood testing and to a women's physio for her hip, back, neck pain. By the way, don't take 5-HTP unless it's prescribed. Definitely don't take it with prescribed antidepressants. And this is not something I give to all clients, but for her, I felt like it could be very, very clearly indicated. So she went and did that for a month. Oh, and I suggested that she do the Pyrrole test as well. So a month later, she came back and she had actually had a really massive improvement. Her mood had gone from a 4 out of 10 up to a 7 out of 10. And she said for the first time since she was a teenager, she feels that spark of life back. So that was really, really great news. And in fact, I could hear, the second one was a phone consult, and I could hear her voice sounded like a different person. There was a really dramatic difference in her voice as well. The pain in her hands was less painful, and her sleep was a lot better as well, because before, even though she was being woken by the baby, even when the baby went back to sleep, it was taking her hours to get back to sleep because she was stressed and anxious. And interestingly, 5-HTP also, or serotonin, also helps with that ruminating type of anxiety as well. And so that conversion to the melatonin also would have helped her sleep. She was still getting anxiety in work situations, but we hadn't really specifically addressed that yet. We were mainly just working on mood. So for her, and also I wanted to investigate the Pyrrole disorder, but she hadn't gotten the test done because she needed to go off the supplements to get the test done. And she didn't want to go off the supplements even for a few days. She said, when you are finally feeling this good mood-wise, when you've been depressed for so long, she didn't want to go off the supplements and get the test done yet. So I said, okay, that's totally up to you. So this second treatment, we wanted to focus more on the social anxiety. So it was just, I guess a Band-Aid approach. I gave her a herbal anxiolytic to use just symptomatically in those situations with work where she gets the social anxiety, because it was only specific situations. So that's what she tried on the second visit. Also, we started looking at diet as well. I often get my mental health patients on an anti-inflammatory blood sugar balancing diet because it's really, really good for mental health, including anxiety and depression. And the first visit, I felt like she had a bit too much on her plate, with the kids and the stress and mood. Didn't feel like she was really in a place, and she didn't feel like she was in a place to look at diet yet. But with her improved mood, she felt like she was ready now to start looking at that. So a month later, she came for her third visit, The pain in her hands was now gone. So I think that was a combination of the anti-inflammatory fish oil plus the diet. Mood was still holding strong at a good 7 out of 10. The family had all had COVID, and she was the main carer. Well, she was the carer for all of them. So she said she had a bit of a dip then because it was a lot of stress, but she had bounced back. She had also gotten COVID, and that can affect mood as well because of the neuroinflammation when you have a viral infection. But she was holding out pretty well. She did have one episode of the work-related social anxiety, so she took the herbal anxiolytic for that and said that worked quite quickly to bring that down, so she was happy with that. So going forward, we're eventually going to test for that pyrrole disorder when she's ready. And because she's had COVID, she also actually had some other immune symptoms from the beginning, like an ongoing sore throat, raised glands, that kind of thing. And she'd tested positive for Epstein-Barr antibodies and then had COVID as well. So going forward, we're doing a lot of immune support and looking at preventing long COVID and post-viral syndrome. And yeah, eventually looking at pyrrole disorder. But I wanted to share this case because it was so interesting in terms of that biochemistry and how that one particular supplement of 5-HTP was exactly what she happened to need because of, I'm assuming that earlier drug use that had affected that conversion from tryptophan to serotonin. So like I said, don't copy the protocol that I gave her. It was very, very individualized. Most patients, it's something completely different and a completely different treatment plan. But I just wanted to give you a feel for how each person is different. Each person's symptoms come from different root causes. And when you get to those root causes, you can often have really, really good results. So I actually offer free introductory 30-minute naturopathic consultations via phone or online video where we do an assessment and look at some of these potential drivers that could be impacting your symptoms. So if you'd like one of those, you can send me a message or I think I've got the link on my Facebook page, but otherwise just send me a message and I'm happy to send you a link. And you're welcome to have one of those. It can be really interesting. Okay, thanks for watching and I will see you next week.